Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Live from the Blue Seats. It is I, producer JL, at it again. We are joined by Mr. the Blogfather himself, the man who doesn't think anyone knows what the 90s are, Dave Shapiro. And
So,
just so
hold on,
you
hold on,
know,
hold on, hold on,
oh,
hold on. Mr. the Blogfather now? You added another title to this?
did I?
You
I
said
don't
Mr.
guess.
the Blogfather. You're going to have to rewind it to, see. I don't know if you understand what the concept of what rewinding is, something we had to do with VHS tapes before we returned them to Blockbuster.
You do know I was born in 1993, so I did live
And by the time you
in.
became a sentient human being, DVDs existed.
Yeah, but you got to remember that DVDs were still relatively new and VHSs were still relatively inexpensive at the time, and Blockbuster was still a thing. It was that in Hollywood Video. Dave, what do you think I am?
When did
Come on.
I just Googled when did the DVD come out? 1995. You were 2 years old.
Yeah, but they weren't really regularly distributed mainstream until like 1998, Dave. Come on.
When did the VHS stop? The decline of the
Um,
VHS began in the early 2000s. So
yeah.
you were 7. Congratulations. You may actually understand what we're talking about here. Welcome to the Big Boy Club.
What are you talking about? I lived in the 90s. I
No,
I,
you did
I
not
don't-
live in the 90s. I lived in
yes
the
I
90s. You
yes
were 7 when the
no.
90s ended.
No, I remember
You
the
know what?
90s very well.
You know what? Comments, chat, when
Oh,
this is posted,
jeez.
you can tell us, did JL grow up in the 90s or did he just happen to exist in the 90s? I existed in the
I
80s. I
rem
didn't grow up in the 80s.
I remember 1999. I remember 1998. I remember 1997. Like, what are we doing here?
Do you remember
You know?
Y2K?
I do actually. I do
Oh,
remember it
no, no, no,
very
no, no,
well.
no, no, no. Let me rephrase. Do you remember experiencing the fear of
Yes.
Y2K and not the, oh, I happen to know what Y2K was?
No, of course I remember the fear because everything on TV. Now, this is going back in the day. We'll get to hockey in a second. I have to prove myself here. Um, they used to have on TV these self-help books they used to sell about what to do for Y2K. That was also around the time that they were really hawking the 1-800 collect calls cards with Mike Piazza and I think Bernie Williams, if I remember correctly. And I
Out of a
remember
pizza boy.
Best Buy was handing out those stickers that said, "Please make sure to turn your computer off by 12/31/1999." And I also remember this very well because my father used to work for an IT company back in the day in New York City. So I can remember a lot of the franticness that was going on because people were trying to make sure that their computers weren't going to crash. I might have been a little kid, but I was a pretty smart little kid, Dave. Okay? I
So
do
what happened?
remember nothing. Everything just went
You
up without.
walked right into that. You walked right into that, dude.
Oh, stop! Come on. What? Oh, what did they say? The news reports said that there was like a vending machine that kind of messed up, and but nothing crazy happened. They were saying, "Oh, the airports are gonna
Oh,
crash. The
no, nothing
planes are gonna fall
happened.
from the sky."
I
You know?
know. It's like the
Okay,
Rangers. Nothing happened.
okay, okay, smart guy. Tell me what happened then. We're still here.
That's what I literally just said. It's like the New York Rangers. Nothing happened.
Okay, then. So why are you saying I walked right into it?
You said you were a smart kid, so I said what happened, and I think you just proved my
Oh,
point.
shut up, Dave. Okay, so we're done proving that I did remember the 90s and early 2000s because apparently if you're under the age of 36, you don't seem to have any visible memories of the late.
Hold
Yeah,
on, hold
because I
on. Now
I
I
also
want to date you a little bit. What is your original TGIF lineup? What is the first TGIF lineup you remember?
oh my gosh, okay. Oh wow. Oh.
This is a tough one, right? Because
It
there are a
is
lot of shows that are
it
going through my head right now,
it
and I'm trying to
is.
remember which ones were all that I sat there and watched with my parents.
Oh, well, I know Full House wasn't playing by the late 90s. That was already on reruns somewhere else. So, I do know that TGIF kind of faded after, like, 1999. Um, it's tough because if I say, like, Family Matters and, I don't think Home Improvement was not on TGIF. So,
No, it
honestly,
was not.
kind of that's actually kind of a hard question because because that to me was just an amalgamation of different types of shows that I remember being on TGIF, but I can't really pinpoint exactly when because I do remember Full House being on TGIF to a degree, whether they showed reruns or not. Um, I remember, what was it? Family Matters?
Dinosaurs. Do you
Di
remember
di
Family Ma
I remember, yes, this is
Dinosaurs,
one of the
Family
that
Matters,
is one of the
Full House, Boy Meets World,
Boy Meets
Step
World, of course,
do you remember
Step by
Step by
Step.
Step
Step by of course I remember Step by
and
Step.
Hanging with Mr. Cooper?
Yes, it's Hanging with Mr. Cooper. Funny enough, I forget his first name, but his last name is Curry. He was on the Drew Carey Show for a little bit. I remember that. So, Tim Curry? No, not Tim Curry. Tim Curry is somebody else.
Tim
Um
Curry is a British treasure.
Yes, it's his name is Curry. I can't remember his first name, but anyways, but yeah, I remember the time very well because I also, if you're looking at 99, 2000, fast forward to almost a year and a half later, we experienced probably one of the worst national tragedies in our lifetime. So I kind of have a pretty good grasp on that, So stop trying to make me feel like I'm this toddler.
You kinda are a little bit of a toddler. That's okay, though. It's
Yeah, but
okay.
anyways, I'm not gonna fight with you here on recollection of the '90s. I see what
This
you're
is
doing, Dave.
I'm having a lot of fun with this. I'm
We're
having way too much
7
fun with
minutes
this.
in, and we haven't even talked hockey yet. I mean, if you wanted to talk hockey in the late '90s, oh, hey, remember Mike York? Remember
Oh, yeah, we remember Mike York traded 1 for 1 for Tom Poti.
for
That worked
Tom
well.
Poti. Yeah. Anyways,
God,
so
that was a
this
trade that everybody groaned as soon as we all found out about it.
well,
It
okay,
was
so
a dumb trade.
the I obviously did watch hockey then, but it wasn't as big of a sport for me as baseball was. So I guess just kind of just for I guess my sake, because why did they do that again? What was say they're trying to do?
Find the next Brian Leach, and Tom Poti was sold to us as the next Brian Leach, and then Tom Poti was very clearly not the next Brian Leach. Spoiler alert.
Well,
And
it's
yeah,
funny.
and the
Kinda
problem was Mike York was part of the fly line with Theo Fleury and Eric Lindros, and that line was
Eric
very good.
Lindros.
He was this homegrown Rangers draft pick that he didn't score 30, but he was pretty close to it. I'm looking up his exact stat line from that year before he got traded. So Rangers 18, 39, 57 in 69 games giggity before being traded to the Oilers in 2002.
Easy there, Glenn.
And then his rookie year, 99, 2000, 26, 24, 50 in 82 games. And they traded
Oh,
him for Tom fucking Poti, and we're going full, I guess, uh I'm losing the word, whatever Rob calls it whenever we curse. Adult
I
censored, I don't know. Although Tom Poti did have one very productive year with the Rangers, his first year, 11, 37, 48. And then
well,
he
if I
never cracked 30 with the Rangers ever again. He never
well, if I
cracked
remember
25 with the Rangers ever again. What a
which is
waste.
odd because a lot of those teams were very high scoring. I never understood that. But if I remember correctly, didn't Tom Poti stay with the team after the lockout? And I think was part of that 06, 07 team to a degree. I mean, he was
So he was
around for
part of the 05, 06
oh
team.
five, oh six.
So 73 games, 3 goals, 20 assists. That was his final season with the Rangers. So the 04-05 season was lost. The 05-06, they still had Tom Poti. They neglected to re-sign him after, a pretty rough year, but he was a plus 16 that year, which is interesting. But
Wait.
just, yeah, interesting.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll have to go into a podcast about digging into those old school Rangers because I definitely, I've made a couple videos about it on my YouTube channel, just about like some of those older players. Like I know I have a video about Theo Fleury, Eric Lindros, Pavel Bure, and having gone through a lot of that footage, it's quite interesting to see the thought processes that were going through the team at the time. Because to me, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, it just kind of seemed like they were always trying to play catch up. At least that's from what I can tell, because it seemed as if every year the team kind of changed. Whether or not it was Graves and Todd Harvey one year, and then next it
Oh
was Bure and
Christ, you're really
Lindbergh.
digging into that, huh? Todd
Well,
Harvey. I was going to
I
throw
do
you
know
a
who Todd
trivia
Harvey is.
question. I was going to throw
Okay,
you a trivia question
go
on
ahead.
that 05-06 Rangers team. Only 2 players finished above a point per game average for the season. One of them is obviously Jaromir Jagr, 54, 69, giggity, 123. Who is the second player to finish above a point per game?
You said 0506.
05-06.
I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but I think the obvious answer is Peter Pruka.
Nope.
Uh, Marty Straka.
Nope.
Uh,
82 games, 76 points for Straka.
oh my gosh, forward or defenseman? Clearly forward.
Forward.
If it's Peter Sikora, I'm gonna yell.
I'm counting guys that played 50 games with the Rangers, all right?
That's right. He got traded in
And
December. Was it
Sikora
December or
actually
January?
was actually under 31 points in 40 games.
Um, is it
And I'll take
William
your next guess
Nylander?
for you. It is not William Nylander, Michael Nylander.
Michael
Wrong.
Nylander.
You're
Sorry,
20 years ahead.
sorry. You know what it was? I saw a tweet about the Amazon Prime series Face Off, and William Nylander was there. Michael Nylander. I made a video about Nylander too. Okay, hold on.
Anyway,
I
no,
want to see
not
if I can
him.
get this. It's not Steve Ruchin, is it?
And no, Nylander for the record was 79 points in 81 games. He just missed it.
So you're saying who is
Who is
second?
the only other player to average a
A
point
point
per
per.
game? Give up.
No, I want to guess this. Is it a defenseman or a forward?
Forward.
Oh man. Okay. So it's not obviously Yager's one of them. Um
And I'm
God,
not talking like Chad Weissman, who put up 1 assist in 1 game. Like, I'm not talking him.
no. If you tell me Brad Isbister, I'm gonna laugh.
Brad Isbister was definitely not on this team.
I know. I'm just being stupid. Is it Jason Ward?
Was he? Oh, he was on this team. Nope, 28 points.
Oh my
And oddly
gosh.
enough, in the top 10 in scoring for that team with 28 points.
Well, after what I remember and all the video I used to comb through, I can see it. Oh my gosh, you said it's a forward? Oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh. Do I should know who this is, right?
You should,
I would
because
hope.
there's a pretty funny highlight of him giving the finger to somebody on national TV.
Well, it's funny because that same year, Michael Nylander basically cursed out Pierre Maguire at the end of that season. Oh my gosh, giving someone the finger on national TV? Forwards, it's not Pruka. Oh man,
Nope.
I'm gonna hate myself if I don't get this because I
Pruka was
probably don't.
47 and
I
68. All right. Just for the sake of the
I'm
podcast, I'm
forgetting.
going to give you the answer. Marty Ruchinski.
Marty
16 goals.
Ruchinski. I forgot he came back. That's right.
16 goals, 39 assists, 55 points in 52 games.
Marty Ruchinski.
One of
Oh.
the 17 Czechs they had on that team.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
6, 7, 7 players from Czechia on that team. 7. Yager, Straka,
Oh my
Ruchinski,
goodness.
Pruka,
Why did I
Sikora,
not think of
Roosevelt,
Ruch?
Malik.
Why did I not think of that? I know he was there. You know what it was? I think everybody hated him so much. I mean, I don't know why.
Who did? Wait,
Maybe
whoa, whoa, whoa,
maybe
whoa!
I'm
Who
young.
hated Ruchinski? He was a gem.
I think
For the
I don't know.
one year he was with the Rangers, he was a gem.
wait, but who am I thinking of? I'm thinking Marty. Who's the other one that he was a Ranger twice? Oh
Sean
man,
Avery?
no, 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 no. There was a player with a similar type name. Uh, oh, Valeri. Oh my gosh, I know who this is. It's not coming to me right now. I don't have any.
Valerie
Uh,
Kamensky?
Valerie Kamensky, I think, was a Ranger twice.
Now I gotta find him.
Why do I
Okay.
feel like Ruchinski was a Ranger twice? And it's funny because I can I remember them playing for the
Uh,
team. Like
I mean, Kamensky played 2 seasons with the Rangers. He didn't have 2 different stints.
what the hell am I thinking of then? Oh my gosh.
Peter Nedved had 2 different stints with the
Well,
Rangers,
yeah, though
one of them
that I
being
knew.
46
Yes.
games.
Yes. Well, that I knew.
I don't
Yes.
I don't know
He
who
got
else you're
traded
thinking
to.
of.
Oh my gosh. I must have really must have confused myself. But wow, Marty
So Ruchinski
Ruchinski.
actually did
Wow.
have Ruchinski had 2 stints, you're all right, sorry. A
All right.
102 for
Okay.
15 games in
Yes.
a 102, and then,
He left and then he
oh
came
2, oh
back.
3, he left for St. Louis, and then he came back. You are
Yeah.
correct there.
Because
Wait,
I
and
looked
then wait, no, he had 3
three.
stints because he came back, and then he got traded to Vancouver, I think. Hold on, 6. Alright, you know what? We're too far down a rabbit hole. I'm already fucking
Yeah.
Ruchinski. Let's
Well,
get into that shit that actually matters.
okay. Well, just one more thing about that. Peter Nedved actually had a third stint with the Rangers. He was a training camp invite in 08, 09,
Oh, that
but he
doesn't
didn't
count.
make
He
the
didn't make
team.
the team.
Ah, but whatever. I just wanted
That's
to
like
say that.
somebody
It
on
was
LinkedIn saying, "I am proud to announce that the New York Rangers have tendered me a qualifying offer to participate in training camp." And then like you actually read into what they actually is like, "Yeah, you were PTO, you didn't make the team." That's my way of saying anybody who posts their stuff on LinkedIn, seriously, like, do you read this stuff that you put out there? Like, have you read what you wrote? Like, stop blowing yourself. It's kind of annoying.
well. All right. Well,
Anyway,
that's
that's my rant on
okay.
LinkedIn.
All right. So
Back to
after
Keandre Miller.
okay, so we took a bit of a turn. We went from the '90s to a trivia question that kind of stumped me to okay, Andre
We're
Miller.
20
So
minutes into the podcast, and we have not talked anything about the
but
Rangers this
that's
year.
okay. It's summer. The Knicks are playing right now. You know, they're currently winning. They're 46-34 as we speak. Uh and it's the summer, they're the only team playing at MSG. So I think we could, goof around a little bit, but once training camp starts, we'll have to kind of serious it up a little bit. But yeah, so touching on K. Andre Miller, so it just kind of seems like as the season ended and things that had kind of started to, I don't want to say leak out, but I guess, things are going to slowly get into shape. Keandre Miller's name has been tossed around on a lot of trade speculation because, the Drury obviously wants to make some moves to, kind of fix this team up. So Elliot Friedman had some comments about it, but I'm going to pass that to you. So just, I guess, with the recent Keandre Miller rumors again, I guess just what are your thoughts on it?
So, for those who don't know, Keandre Miller was mentioned by Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts podcast. I don't know how often they release that thing. I feel like they release it every day. But basically, the Rangers are testing the market on Keandre Miller just to see what's available. And anybody who's been paying attention shouldn't be surprised. I mean, his name's been out there since the trade deadline. His It's going to take a lot to pry him away from the Rangers. It is. I know people don't like him, but where else are you going to find somebody that can that has the talent, the raw ability that he has? He stayed somewhat afloat despite having Jacob Truba as his partner, followed by the amazing overpay of Will Borgen as his partner. And at his salary, which is going to be rough, a shade under 6 million if we follow Evolving Hockey's projections, where are they going to find somebody like that who's 25 years old? If they trade him, there needs to be a huge return coming back so that we don't look at that and go, well, we all knew that would happen because we all know what happens to defensemen once they leave the Rangers. Name
That
one
seems
defenseman who left the Rangers and got worse. Name one.
oh. Oh, wow, that is tough. Uh,
You can't.
honestly, I'm trying to think about it.
You can't.
Ooh, you can't even
One
say that about
defenseman who left the
Neil
Rangers and
Pionk.
got worse. Neil Pionk got better.
That's
And
what
if
I'm saying.
you and to be fair, if you shame Neil Pionk, Carly's gonna come after you with a steak knife.
No, I like Neil Pionk. I was a little upset that he was involved in the trade, but I was still very vocal about supporting that trade. But I would have loved if the Rangers had kept Neil Pionk. So don't come for me, Carly, because I do like Neil Pionk. Um, Yeah, no, I guess what's interesting about all this rumor mongering or irresponsible rumor mongering, as you so eloquently like to put it on the website, Dave,
I cannot
is
take credit for that. I leveraged that off of River Ave Blues.
okay. Well, I was trying to give you some credit, but thank you for
No,
correcting
no, I will
me.
give so much credit for our existence to Mike and the crew over there because they really helped get the blog off the ground. And
Okay, nice.
when they basically were like, okay, we're kind of done, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do one or two things. I went with irresponsible rumor mongering, and I did the fan confidence poll.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And
That's
those are the two things. I was like, you know what, I like those things that you did. You guys aren't doing it obviously anymore, so um, Mike hasn't reached out and been like, "Yo, what the hell?" So I feel like it's okay.
okay. Well, I like that term, irresponsible rumor mongering, but
It's
I
nice, right?
guess it is. But I guess amongst all of that quote unquote irresponsible rumor mongering, I guess there really isn't sort of a destination that's kind of because whenever there's trade rumors that go out and
Yeah,
you
there's always a team, but they said
there's
they're
always
gauging the market. Like, of course they're gauging the market. They'd be dumb not to.
well, you gauge the market for everybody on the team, and I think there's been a trade rumor basically connected to everyone that's not named JT Miller or anyone that's young. I mean,
Even the
they
young
could.
ones, there are trade rumors for Alexi Lafreniere at this point.
Well, there's also a weird sort of rumor that Will Cooley's going to get offer sheeted, um,
No, he's not.
which I don't think. No, I don't think that's a legitimate fear. I don't think Jeff Gordon would do that. But
No, he wouldn't.
just on Miller again, oh, you looking at the current construct. Obviously things could change between now and the beginning of July. Um, but I don't know if you can really afford to lose him unless, like you said, the return is really, really good. Because if you look at sort of the way that this defense is currently set up, and mind you, it's only May 29th, so obviously things can change. But just looking at the way that the defense is currently constructed, and obviously with the fact that Miller was playing hurt along with Braden Schneider, and presumably someone by the name of Adam Fox, and everyone else that was basically on the back end, you have to assume that they're gonna keep him unless the deal is something they can't miss. And I guess this kind of begs the question, what exactly would be constituted as a good deal for Keandre Miller? Because if you look at, I guess, his skill set, he's still a really good skater. He makes some dumb decisions sometimes, but I feel like that can still be kind of taught and he can grow past it. He's look, as much as I've bashed him myself because it was very frustrating to see him on the ice. You have to just look at the reality of the situation is we don't have that many players on the back end that can move like he can. Oh,
We
obviously,
don't.
I'm not
We don't.
uh,
Period.
right, and
He's the best skating defenseman they have. Period.
right, and I'm not gonna denigrate Vakanainen. I'm not gonna denigrate Will Borgen. I'm not here to, get on anybody's case, but outside of Adam Fox, he is your next best defenseman in terms of being shifty. All those other guys are competent enough to move a puck, but Keandre Miller can, kind of, get to that extra step. And I think honestly, they should keep him unless there's this sort of can't miss deal where it's sort of like a package deal.
With
That's
Rocco
usually
Mossy, maybe?
Oh, well, you know what? I'll say this about that. The more, I mean, you mentioned this a lot, not only in our chat, but you also just kind of alluded to it on the podcast as well. That would be such a good fit for this team. And I think I think they said, and you guys have might have posted this, that Rossi is looking for a contract akin to what Matt Boldy got from Minnesota. That's what
which is
7 by
7 by
7,
7. And
which
that
I don't
is
think,
amazing. I like he's
which
worth it.
yeah, yeah. So I don't think that's a bad thing. So especially if you're essentially moving Mika's advantage ad, but also too, I will say this: if the plan is to turn Mika into JT Miller's winger, which I think they should do, in all honesty, uh, well, actually stick with it for the time being. Um, why not have Rossi just kind of slip into the second line center, or at least maybe even get to, you know, the 3C with Trocheck being number 2. Now, obviously, I think the big thing here is obviously you have to trade Panarin, but also I honestly I think out of all the players, I do think Panarin ends up getting dealt because I think some team will be willing to take on that contract for 1 year in terms of a rental. And I think the Rangers would look to try and get the extra space and, kind of save up for that, dream Connor McDavid chase that I think that's not going to end up happening, unfortunately. But I guess just to finish on Miller and transition into the next point, I think moving Keandre Miller would be counterproductive at this point unless there's someone else that comes in on the back end that can replicate or do similar things on the back end that Miller can do. Because all in all, you look at the way that these teams are currently constructed, a lot of these teams can move the puck out of their defensive zone. And that perfectly transitions into our next point. So if you're listening to this, it's May 29th, and the Florida Panthers are making their way to the Stanley Cup final for the third year in a row. And as of right now, I think Edmonton is beating Dallas currently, but it
3-1.
looks 3-1.
3.
So it kind of
Yep.
looks we're heading into a repeat of last year's Stanley Cup final, which was pretty good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Those are two of the best teams in the league you can put together. So I think that would be good for the sport. But I guess just kind of looking at the two teams in the Metro, or at least just in the East, that had to basically take on the Panthers to get to for Florida to get where they needed to get, are the Carolina Hurricanes and also the New York Rangers. And so now I guess the question is sort of out there. Is it the fact that the Panthers are really well run? Because it's kind of what it seems like. Or can you make a case of the fact that both the Rangers and the Hurricanes don't seem to kind of be well run or have that sort of extra oomph? Because the Rangers, for the most part, make it to the playoffs with very good teams. Now, obviously, they end up falling short after a bit, but the Carolina Hurricanes are the same way, even though they're analytical darlings and everyone seems to, slobber all over them. And they always seem to just kind of bow out the same way that everybody predicts that they're going to bow out. At the end of the day, they still make it, and there is still a modicum of success that they have to, that they can attest to in terms of, what they're about. Granted, it's not the most sexy thing because we're used to the Rangers being absolutely chaotic and making life crazy, while the Hurricanes tend to go a little bit more of a conservative route. But what they do works for them. So at the end of the day, is it the fact that the Panthers are just really good and are the class of the East? Is it the fact that there's something flawed with the Hurricanes or the Rangers? Or, I mean, could it be both? What are your thoughts, Dave?
So the lazy answer is, oh, it's a tax-free state, which is a load of crap. And Florida is a very well-run team. The Matthew
Matthew
Kachuk
Tkachuk.
trade, Jesus,
Well
trade
done, Dave.
obviously was a trade they had to make. Mackenzie Weegar and Jonathan Huberdeau for Kachuk. Trade they had to make. Barkov they drafted. Lundell they drafted. And obviously Aaron Ekblad they drafted. But this is where they set themselves apart. And this is where, the stats, the fancy stats that everyone's like, watch the game, nerd. This is where the fantasy stats matter because they got Sam Reinhart, Brandon Montour, and Sam Bennett for Devin Levi, Emil Heineman, the 88th pick in 2021, the 28th pick in 2022, and the 61st pick in 2022. That is what? 2/3, a first, and two middling prospects, if that,
Mhm.
for Sam Reinhart, Brandon Montour, and Sam Bennett. They got Gustav Forsling off waivers, and anybody could have claimed him. The Rangers were ahead of Florida when they could have
Which
had him.
is crazy to
And they
think
got
about
Carter
too.
Verhaeghe for $1 million a year. Then they let Montour go specifically because he did not have great numbers and he is not performing the way he did last year. I think he's with Seattle now. He's not the same defenseman.
Mhm. Yep.
And they got Nate Schmidt, whom I want the Rangers to re-sign. We covered him on the last pod.
Mhm.
They went out, they signed Dmitry Kulikov, who is a very good defenseman. Nico Mikkola, name sounds familiar, another defenseman that left the Rangers that became very good with the Panthers, although that's more of a good fit kind of a thing. And then they go and they get decent value out of Seth Jones. This is a well-run team. This has nothing to do with tax-free. And when you
Touch
have a
on
team,
the tax-free thing a little more because I'm curious to hear about that.
everyone's like, Florida doesn't have any income tax. And these guys, they don't pay. I think New York's income tax rate for these guys making 10 million or Barkov's 10 million, I think it's like 15-20% or some crap like that.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah. So a lot of guys in New York and Toronto and Edmonton and places like that, they wind up losing 30 to 40% or higher on their salaries just to taxes. And then they got to pay agents and management and things like that. So they wind up taking a fraction of their salary home because of all that. But it is a mild competitive advantage, but it's a small piece of the pie when you have a team that is this well run. They made that big swing. They gave up a 100-point player and a top right-handed defenseman, or sorry, a top right defenseman. He happens to be left-handed for Kachuk. Then they gave up peanuts for the middle of their lineup. They gave up nothing to get Forsling. I mean, this is just a well-run team, and now they're probably letting Aaron Ekblad go.
Which is even crazy to think about. All
And
things
Sam Bennett's
considered.
somebody's going to give Sam Bennett $95 million, and they're going to
It's
instantly
pro
regret it.
probably the Rangers. I could see it.
No,
But
I
but
can't. I can't see the Rangers doing that unless they trade Panarin for no salary coming back, and then they don't go ahead and get a Rossi or a Brodeen or anything like that. I'm picking on Minnesota,
of
but
course. Well, I think also too, one people have to remember when you talk about no taxes, uh, the players still have to pay the taxes in the cities they play in. I think a lot
yeah,
of people forget that. So yeah, you'll probably get some sort of alleviation only in Florida, but
50% alleviation.
if
But not no,
yeah, but you're
it's less than
still
50% alleviation because you go to Seattle, tax-free state, Texas, a tax-free state. That's at least
uh-huh.
2 games right there.
What about Arizona?
Not
I
California,
was gonna say I
California.
was gonna say Arizona. I realized they don't have a team yet. I forgot about that.
The
Uh,
team anymore. I don't know what the other
yeah,
tax Tennessee is a tax one of
not
those
sure.
mid states, mid-Atlantic states, I
Yeah, so
guess.
about 50%, I guess you can say that.
Yeah, a little
But
less
sti
because of the one-off games here and there.
but they still have to pay those taxes in other places. So,
Mhm.
it's not as big of a benefit because then if that's the case, everybody's going over there, because then, Panarin doesn't come here in 2019 if that were the case. You know, Yager probably doesn't, probably wants to go there at some point. Well, he did go there at some point, but early on in
Yager
his
played for
career.
everybody.
Well, that's true, but I, it, it I think that's like a cop out excuse. Also,
It is.
these guys they make, at least relative to the other leagues, it's not a lot, but these guys do make a decent amount of money, uh, not only in just the salaries, but also in merchandise and sponsorships and all that. So a lot of all that tends to offset, and hockey players just kind of seem to kind of, I guess, in some aspects, take what they can get sometimes. So yeah, no, I think that's kind of a crock. Then when people say that, because if then that's the case, then like I said, everybody's going to go down to play for the Florida teams, and we're all like, oh well.
Sorry, Russ. You're the one that brought this up.
Yeah, it's not like
Sorry,
people are just
Russ.
it's not like people are just breaking down the doors to go down. And I mean, obviously it might, obviously it helps that both the teams are really good, but those teams for quite a while had trouble bringing people over. It's because of what you talked about is what ended up getting people to go over there. It's the strong drafting, and the great way to find depth in the bottom parts. I mean, goodness gracious, they were able to pry Evan Rodriguez from Pittsburgh or
Oh yeah,
Colorado, and they that's a steal. Evan
good call
Rodriguez
on Evan Rodriguez. Yeah,
yeah,
what did they
annoys
give up for him again?
I I see if it's so insignificant that I probably can't even tell you, honestly. Or maybe they signed him. I cannot remember off the top of my head.
Evan Rodriguez was a signing. It was a signing.
So it was a
You might
signing,
be
but
thinking
it
of
was
Lois the Reinen. Him.
Lusterainen?
Yeah.
Well, either way, but you just look at
Who
everyone
was a
everywhere.
Carolina Panther.
Who was the
Sorry,
Carolina
Carolina Panther,
the Car
Carolina
oh, Carolina
Hurricane.
Hurricane. Right, Carolina wrong sport, Dave. Wrong
Oh, give me a break. We're talking Florida Panthers and we're talking Carolina. I was obviously going to get those two screwed up at some point. Remember, I'm old.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't mention the Hamptons Roads Rhinos. So
The what?
ooh. Oh, you don't know what that is? Oh, okay. Uh, Hampton Roads is an area down near where the Hurricanes are currently at, and they were rumored to uh, potentially get an expansion team. I think it was around the San Jose Sharks, Ottawa Senators expansion. Um, and because of that interest, is what ultimately ended up opening the door for Peter Carmanos to send the Whalers down to Carolina. If you look them up, they actually had a design written, made up for them and everything. But I think Hampton Roads is a little bit further out from Raleigh. But that would have been the team. We wouldn't be talking about the Carolina Hurricanes. We would be talking about the Florida Panthers beating up on the Hampton Roads Rhinos at one point. Just some just some irrelevant trivia for you to know.
Yeah, that's yeah. I I got nothing.
I broke his brain. But yeah,
It really doesn't take much to break my brain lately.
well, that's true. I've learned that the easy way and the hard way. But I guess just kind of touching on just I guess the Rangers and the Hurricane aspect of just this whole conversation.
Oh
I
yeah, we were bringing this back to the Rangers at some point,
yeah,
weren't we?
so I think it's just that when it comes relative to obviously no team is perfect. Obviously, the Rangers do have issues. Obviously, the Hurricanes have issues. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think Florida is in such a different class at this point because of the way that they've been able to kind of finagle their way around, not only with the cap, but also just finding ways to replace certain pieces of the team. It's very similar to what their counterparts in Tampa Bay did when they won the 2 Stanley Cups in a row and made the 3 consecutive Stanley Cup final. It's very similar to what the Boston Bruins would do, even especially after they won their cup in 2011. They were always competitive and were able to find, players either in their system or through free agency that no one really knew about, and they would become good players. And I think the Buffalo Sabres way back in the day were also really adept at that to a degree as well. So I just think that when it comes to the Rangers, because I'm not a Carolina Hurricanes fan, so I kind of know about them on a surface level to the degree of what I see. But I think with the Rangers, I think that the foundation is there. It just needs a couple more tweaks. But it honestly just all depends on what the higher ups do. So um,
And
I-
the
it's interesting.
the Rangers and the Canes were in a very similar spots when they faced Florida. Listen, Florida's a very well-run team. They're not perfect, but they get so much more out of the whole. And the Rangers, like you said, couldn't move the puck out of the defensive zone, and the defense was just getting crushed. That's the same issue that Carolina had. Their forwards are fine. It was their defense. They lost Pesci and Shea last year. And yeah, the Rangers went up 3-0 against Carolina because for some reason Carolina turns into a pumpkin against Igor Shesterkin.
Well,
But like,
everything does.
I mean, if we're looking at Carolina and saying, "Oh, they just needed a couple of pieces. It was a retooling year." Why are we not saying the same thing about the Rangers? Because the Rangers basically what had last season, but they were last season aside, people were saying blow up the Rangers after they lost to Florida. So we're talking this point last year. Blow up the Rangers. They're not good enough to beat Florida. Why are we not saying that about Carolina? Very similar teams. The Rangers
Right.
had the high end talent, the high end finishing talent. Carolina had the structure. Florida beat them both.
Well, I think I guess with Carolina, obviously it's not New York, so that the market one plays a factor into it too. But I guess you can't discount how much the media loves them. And I know that sounds like a cop out, but I mean it is true though, because if you look at both those teams, the Rangers actually have more upside, like you said. So we all knew what the issues were with that team, and two of them the Rangers actually did address. Uh, but now all of a sudden the Rangers are the pariah, but Carolina, who, yeah, they were able to make it to the conference final, which I guess congratulations to them. But if you look at their offseason, it really was not that much different than what the Rangers did, outside of the fact that the Rangers got rid of two of the worst players that could have potentially, that potentially did weigh them down. But one says blow it up, the other one is, oh no, they're fine. It's kind of like that meme of the workplace sexual harassment meme, where it's like you got the handsome guy who hits on the girl, and it's like okay, but then it's the ugly guy
Oh
who hits
yeah,
on
I
the
know that
girl.
one all of a sudden has been showing up everywhere.
Yeah, so and then it's like sexual harassment, but like it's both sexual harassment in the meme, but the Hurricanes get away with it because they're darlings. And I think where this also comes from too is I think that Twitter has pervaded the, I guess I don't want to say landscape, or just sort of the way that media outlets treat the way things are covered. And obviously, it's New York versus Carolina, so you're going to get more reaction out of a New York, and it's just nothing new. You know, you're going to get more notoriety or reaction from talking about something in New York City than you do about Carolina. But I think with the social media age now, and the fact that um, I'll be honest, the Ranger fans are very reactionary. New York fans in general are very reactionary. But what does reactionary result to? Results into clicks. Clicks turns into revenue. Revenue equals money in someone's pocket. So, especially if you're a verified user on one of these websites and you have a ton of engagement onto it, that gets people money. Because I'll give you an example outside of hockey. In 2021, the New York Mets traded this prospect, Pete Crow Armstrong, to the Chicago Cubs for Javier Baez, who was an infielder, and Trevor Williams, who was a pitcher. Now, at the time, it was not a bad trade because Pete Crow Armstrong was a little bit further out in his development. He was struggling through injuries. Don't really know if he was going to amount to anything. Javier Baez, established player, won a World Series with the Cubs in 2016. He was a spark plug for the Mets at the time, even though they didn't make the playoffs. And then Trevor Williams is a pitcher that they were able to keep for the next year. So looking at it then, the Mets it looked like a good trade for the Mets because Pete Crow Armstrong wasn't making any noise in the minors. Now, hindsight's 2020, obviously. You look at this year, or rather last year, when Pete Crow Armstrong ended up coming up with the Cubs, he starts killing it. And this year, even more so, he starts killing it for Chicago. Javier Baez didn't stay with the Mets after 2021, went to the Detroit Tigers. Trevor Williams played one more year with the Mets after that and then went to Washington. So perspective is always different in terms of trades. So, it's like people were getting on the Mets, even still to this day. I cannot tell you how many times I open up that dumb app, you know, and I
It's
see.
Elon, you should sell that thing, quit again.
I
Sorry.
agree 100%. No, you're right. I open that dumb app, and next thing I know is, oh, I feel like I get another Photoshop graphic saying Pete Armstrong went 3 for 4 today with a home run and 2 doubles. Well, Javier Baez is killing it with the Tigers. But what about the Mets? The Mets are in a playoff spot. Okay, we signed the biggest free agent in modern history,
Yeah,
and
you broke Yankee fans too. It's kind of funny to
yeah,
me.
yeah, it is really funny, and I love how
I'm not a
people.
baseball guy, so it's just funny to
No,
watch people melt
it's
down.
it's hilarious. I That's another conversation for another day. But like, and then the Mets loaded up on prospects. So even if, you know, Pete Crow Armstrong was still here, he would have had a tough time coming through because the Mets just loaded the farm system between then and, essentially now. So, but the point I'm trying to make though is that with New York and the way that the two teams are perceived, a lot of these media outlets know that if you say anything about the Rangers online, you're going to get a lot of clicks. That's why the media, or at least the coverage, is different, at least in my
And that's why
opinion.
I'm on Blue Sky because you don't get that. It's great.
Well, I hate to tell this to you, Dave, but it's going to end up there at some point
Oh,
because
I'm aware and I'm enjoying it while I can. All right, let me
because
have the thing that I like for a little bit. All right, why do you got to
no,
do
of
this?
course. No, I'm
Why do you
just
got to do
saying,
that?
like, beware of the Ides of
Let
March.
me have
It's
my nice thing.
but it's really annoying because especially when you're trying to have, I guess if you want to call it civil discourse in terms of sports, it just gets drowned out by all the reactionary stuff. And I'll say this on a bit of a sidebar: those reactionary shows on like ESPN and Fox Sports totally killed sports discourse because everything becomes reactionary. Everything has to come to where everybody needs the scoop. Granted, even though trying to get the scoop was not a new thing, but when you have reporters trying to verify inaccurate things, actually, it happened today, funny enough, even though I wouldn't doubt that it's true, but it actually happened today, the day of this
Oh, with
report
Ovechkin.
with Ovechkin. Apparently, there was an email that went out to Capitals season ticket members that this is going to be Alexander Ovechkin's final season. And look, I've always maintained that that was going to be the case anyways, because when he re-upped his contract, he re-upped it for a very small amount of time because I guess they anticipated that he was going to get to the record by the end of that extension. So he's talked about wanting to go back to Russia for a long time. So it's more than likely I think he played for what, Dinamo Riga or something like that. I can't remember.
I don't
But
know.
he's gonna do the same thing Yager did. He's gonna play one final season in Washington, and then he's gonna go back to Russia and retire there. Same thing. Datsuk did the same thing. That's what these guys generally tend to do from that region of the earth. So, but I can't go off of that report unless I've either seen an email from an official Washington Capitals ticket rep or it came from the team itself. So I'm not going to rush to post that information unless it's verified. And that's something that people used to do back in the day.
Wait, we're
Another
supposed to
example,
verify?
apparently so. Apparently
Well,
that's
can you explain to me what that word means? It's lost on me.
just getting your crap together is basically what it means. But and then I'll mention one more situation was when Shohei Ohtani for when he was a free agent. I mean, the writing was on the wall. We all knew he was going to sign with the Dodgers, but there was smoke surrounding the fact that he might sign with the Toronto Blue Jays. And there were a lot of reports coming out from reputable major league sources, like reporters, John Morosi included, were essentially saying that, I think Bob Nightingale was also part of this too from USA Today, that Ohtani was going to be a Blue Jay. And what they used was a flight from LA to Toronto. It was just this someone apparently was on the flight tracker app and saw that there was a flight coming in from Los Angeles or Anaheim into Toronto. And then there was another report that came out with one of the Blue Jays pitchers at the time. I want to say it was Yusei Kikuchi, or one of
That's
their
not a
pitchers
real
at the
name.
time. No, it is. That is an actual pitcher, Yusei Kikuchi. Um, he was organizing this sort of dinner, like, with a bunch of people, and it was on the same night that that flight from LA was supposed to land in Toronto. So, you know, if you really wanted to put two and two together, I can see how it makes sense. But if you're a verified reporter, why are you gonna not use your sources to confirm the information? That's why, guys like Jeff Passan and Ken Rosenthal are so good at what they do, is because, or even John Heyman do. I can't even believe I'm saying that, are good at what they do. And I'll say this about the hockey guys too, and this is also a conversation, because the hockey reporters are also directly tied to a lot of what these narratives are. Because unlike the NBA, unlike MLB, and even unlike the NFL to a degree, because the NFL is probably one of the NFL reporters are some of the biggest shills on earth, which doesn't mean that they're any worse than anyone else, but um the hockey ones, they're I don't want this to come off as denigrating them.
Oh, just say it.
They're not useful
They're not
at this
listening to the
current.
pod, I can assure you of that.
Right, but they're not. Well, apparently Larry Brooks might listen to us because he seems to take a lot of our stuff. Paging Larry Brooks. You want to get me on?
I don't think he takes it. All right. I just think either there's coincidence or it's, hey, there's a topic that came up that I feel like we should talk about. I don't think he's stealing
Hey,
our content.
listen, Larry. If you're asking an intern to listen to this, just call me. I'll come on the show. Hey, put me on with Brian Boyle and Molly Walker. I'll come on. Give them a break. I'll come on. Why not?
Dude, you'd get eaten alive on that show. So would I.
Why? I don't think I would.
I would get eaten alive by Boyle because there are very few people, in the writing area, be it journalist, blogger, podcaster, whatever, that actually understand the concept of tying stats to systems. And Boyle does it so well. He does
I
it
think I
so well.
I think I
He does it
comprehend
well.
it well.
Ryan Callahan does it well. Valley does it
Callahan does
well.
it well. Yes.
Yeah, so like those guys, those are the guys that I want to learn from to be able to tie it to specific systems. And Boyle would eat me alive on that.
Well, good, because I would hope he would, because he played hockey, so I would hope he would.
Wait, he
Which
did?
kind of. Yeah. We'll talk to
He
Barbara
did?
Underhill. You know. Um. So, anyways, I guess the point I'm trying to make, this very roundabout way to finish this point, is the way that both of the teams are perceived. I guess it's not so different, but also at the same time, you know, both teams are really not that far off. It's just all about perception. And I think in this sort of thing, look, I'm sure Hurricanes fans are, I don't really care about, Canes Nation, but I'm sure that they're probably having similar thoughts like what we did towards the end of that season. But any smart observer will tell you that, they just need a couple of, patches here and there, you know. I don't know. It's just one gets. And I guess also too, it's kind of unfair to Florida. I think people are beginning to realize it now that the Panthers are a juggernaut. I mean, 3 consecutive Stanley Cup final appearances, only done by the team that's in the same state of them last time. I think that says a lot. I think people are now beginning to realize that that's a damn good organization. Bill Zito has done a phenomenal job in creating a sustainable winner under the cap, you
Yep.
know. And
And I'm trying to
but,
pull up their cap space for next offseason, but
but
Nothing's
But I will
loading.
say this. But I will say this though. Well, get new internet. Um, but I will say this though. I think the one thing that we also have to remember is that the Matthew Kachuk trade is not something that happens a lot. So
No, it never. And Brady Chuck isn't happening. So people
no,
enough of that crap.
unfortunately, that's very pie in the sky. Do I want it
Oh,
that? I think it'd be great. Honestly, I think that would give this team a lot of gusto. But um, I don't. The Panthers were very fortunate to have that deal fall in their lap. If this
yes.
if this had happened 2 or 3 years prior, maybe more, then I think the same luck happens to the Rangers because I feel like that would be the type of move that the Rangers would have made at the time. All things
So
considered.
okay, so just something to think about. The Florida Panthers have 77 roughly $77 million committed to next season. $95 million cap.
Wow.
That's $18 million in cap space. They are only losing Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand, Nico Sturm. I mean Thomas Nosek, but that doesn't really count. And Aaron Ekblad and Nate Schmidt. So three forwards, two defensemen, and they need a backup goalie.
Look at that. And that could easily be fixed through trades and small signings because the
You know
skill
what's going to
set
piss
team.
us off? You know what's
What?
going to piss us off? When they trade for Marco Rossi.
Oh, you think that's what they're gonna do? You think that's a very Florida Panthers type trade?
I think it's a very Florida Panthers type trade, but also a very Bill Guerin type trade who is looking for a veteran center who has playoff pedigree. And who better than Carter Verhaeghe?
Carter Verhaeghe for Marco Rossi?
But Verhaeghe has a no move clause. Worth noting, Verhaeghe has a no move clause.
Okay.
I am willing
Wow.
to bet if Verhaeghe didn't have a no move clause, that's a 1-for-1 trade.
Well, I mean, considering that he's won a cup there, I kind of get why.
Probably about to be 2 cups. And he put up
Yeah.
multiple
Yeah.
70-point seasons.
Wow. Yeah. I always thought Carter Verhaeghe would have been good for this team, but then again, what do I know? But anyways, so I think it's just unfair portrayal of the Rangers. I mean, obviously they're not the greatest right now, but the two teams are very similar. So I don't see why one team gets vilified and the other team gets, praised. Every year,
So,
without a doubt. It's always at the beginning of the spring, at the fall. It's always, oh, hurricanes, oh, the analytical darlings. Yeah, I mean, they shoot a lot, high volume, low volume, high whatever, but yeah, no, I don't get it.
I will give you another trivia piece. So Toronto drafted Carter Verhaeghe 3rd round in 2013.
Yes.
He was traded twice, once in 2015 and once in 2017. From Toronto in 2015, it was Toronto to which team? Metro Division.
Columbus.
The Islanders.
Oh, the Islanders. Oh.
And then in 2017, the Islanders traded him to another Atlantic team.
Which would be Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Tampa Bay let him walk.
Well,
I just think
that
that's
that
interesting.
reminds me. It is. No, but that also that small tidbit reminds me of how the Islanders had Jared Spurgeon, but then didn't use him, and then complained for years why they never had a good defenseman on the back end. But that's beside the
Yep.
point.
The Islanders, the Leafs and the Islanders never even let him play in the NHL. He got 52 games with Tampa before Florida signed him. Immediately put up 36 points in 43 games in a COVID shortened year. 55, 73, 72, 53. That's why Florida keeps winning cups.
Right, because they're picking talent out of the freaking blue. Uh,
Yeah, like they're doing what everybody says Tampa does.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is why they're going to the cup final for the 3rd straight year. This is why they're I can't see Edmonton beating them. Dallas won't. I
No,
can't see Edmonton beating them
no, no, no.
again.
I think it's gonna be Florida's to take. I always
Mhm.
maintained. Well, I did say at one point that the cup was gonna come from the West, but I think that might change. It also depends on how much McDavid is willing to go crazy like he did last year. But and I guess one more thing just to kind of touch on before we end this podcast. You look at both teams of the Islanders and the Maple Leafs. I just had this thought, and it kind of seems like the whole John Tavares situation was essentially a wash, if you think about it,
Mhm.
because they the Islanders didn't get any better. Obviously, I mean, yeah, they had a couple of runs in the playoffs without Tavares, but I mean, they were on a downturn after a bit. But then you look at Toronto with Tavares, and look, that's the one thing I'll give Islanders fans, sort of, I guess I don't say credit, but just sort of something that they can look at. Toronto didn't do anything with Tavares, and I don't think Tavares is going to resign. I think what we made a projection because I had said that maybe Tavares is someone that the Rangers would look at, but he still kind of wants like second line center money, even though he doesn't play like a second line center anymore. Um, but you look at the trajectory of both those teams, and honestly, I think if you want to just look at, I guess that alone, they they kind of were better off with Barzal than they are with Tavares, and they seem like they're in a better shape to rebuild if they do it right. The Toronto Maple Leafs have to really clean house at some point because it's now you have to say to yourself, well, you have all these guys and you can barely get past the second round. You gotta, something has to give. And considering that they're in the same division as the Panthers, they're just gonna get eaten alive. No pun intended, of course. So I just had that thought.
I was with you until I looked down and I realized that apparently my 2-year-old wiped a handful of tomato sauce on my shirt.
Goodness gracious.
And
Well,
then I gotta admit, while you were talking, like, when did she do this? And how did I not notice until now? Because it is 9:30. She was in bed at 7:05, which means she was eating dinner around 6:30. It's been 3 hours, and I'm not wearing a dark shirt. I'm wearing like a light blue shirt. How did I not see this? And more importantly, why did my wife not say anything to me? Because I know she saw it.
the joys of
Anyway,
parenting.
I
Okay.
want to bring up 2 points about the rain. Well, 1 point about the Rangers and one theoretical for you.
Okay.
First things first,
And we'll end
going
on
full
this too.
circle. We'll go first full circle on Keandre Miller. Just a
Okay.
reminder: the Rangers' left defense right now is Miller, Carson Saucy, and I'm sticking with Saucy, and Urho Vakanainen. Zach Jones, for all intents and purposes, is gone. If the Rangers trade Miller, they are keeping Carson Soucy. I'll call him properly because they are not going to overhaul the entire left side of the defense in one season. If Miller goes, Soucy stays. And I cannot tell you how bad that is. I understand you may not like Keandre Miller, but you definitely dislike Carson Soucy more. Lesser of two evils. Keep Miller. But let's say Utah comes calling. They have the fourth overall pick.
Mhm.
Let's say Utah comes calling with the fourth overall pick for a package of Keandre Miller and the 12th overall pick.
Uh, duh. Yeah.
Who's now the question is who's available and who do you take? If we assume Schaefer, Misa are 1-2, who's the third?
It's tough because there's really no big consensus number 1. Um, who's drafting 3rd again? It's the
So
Islanders, San Jose. Oh, who's
okay,
3rd? Could
okay, so there's Hagens, obviously.
well,
There's
yeah.
Jake O'Brien. There's Anton Frundell. and those are probably your only guys that'll go top 5. You may see a I'm gonna butcher this kid's name. Radam Murka? MRTKA. You
Murtka?
have 5 letters in your name, 1 vowel, and it's the last letter, and there are no Y's.
That's like Martin Firk.
And for all the Scrubs fans, whenever I saw Martin Firk's name, I always thought Frick from Dr. Elliot Reed. Anyway, I think I just dated
Scrubs
myself
reference, I
because
love
that
it.
show started in like 2000.
I
JL was
remember
like
Scrubs.
7.
I was, yeah, just about. I remember
Mhm.
Scrubs. NBC.
So, do you give up Miller and the 12 for the 4?
Well, who picks third? I'm trying to remember who picks third. It's is it Chicago?
Okay, let me pull up Tankathon. I think it is Chicago. Well, that is not what I want to do. I'm
'Cause
in the most uncomfortable position right now trying to type. Tankathon,
well,
NHL,
that's not what
Islanders, San Jose, Chicago, Utah.
okay, so that all so now it's an interesting situation there because um you you have to think now um if that deal were to be proposed and the Rangers somehow managed to get fourth overall, um you would have to think that they would go for a defenseman because I don't know if
No, they're
I
not going defenseman. They're
no
going
well
Higgins or O'Brien at that
but
point.
well that's the thing I'm trying to say though is that it Misa and Schaefer, I think, are going one. I think Misa is going to the Islanders. I think a lot of this stuff about Hagens and him being an Islander, I think that's all just trying to reverse some sort of thing that happened with John Tavares, right? Because he's from Long Island, Islander fan. He's got the picture because apparently now everybody, apparently whenever a player signs with the team, it just so happens that they have a picture of them in that uniform when they were a kid somehow. Like it's gotten a lot crazier since the Pajama Boy picture. But if if it were the fact that I think Chicago would go for Higgins, and if that's the case, you go O'Brien. But I think, and this is just sort of the optimist in me, that if they do get the fourth overall pick, which I don't think Utah's going to trade in the first place, but if
Oh
they
no, they're
do,
not.
which I think
It's
would be
just something that's
stupid,
been floated.
right? I think it would be dumb on their part, considering that they're trying to build a brand and you want to get a high end player. So I think O'Brien ends up going over there. Um, but um, if that were to happen, I'm hoping Hagens can fall to number 4 because we have seen players crater before in terms of value and losing stock capital. I mean, it happened to Matvey Michkov, when he was drafted. It's happened to, you know, uh, was it Oliver Wahlstrom? It happened to for a bit, um, a ways ago. But yeah, I if they offer the fourth, you have to trade him then. But again, you basically just touched on it, you know, Carson Saucy, which now I'm gonna get stuck saying that. Um
Nice.
Carson Saucy, yeah, you can't go into the next season with just having him back there. If he's gonna be a spare, fine. It's very similar to when the Rangers had Ben Harper as a spare. Is it ideal? No, but it is what it is. I also don't like the fact that Zach Jones is going to get traded. I hate how that's going to be a certainty, even though it hasn't happened yet. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Maybe not. Well, you know what? I'll just say this. I feel like there's been some sort of reevaluation with things with Mike Sullivan, which just that's going to be part
That's
of
fair.
something
That
else.
is very true.
So I just if this was Laviolette, maybe, but that Mike Sullivan's here and he tends to kind of get the best out of his players in that degree. I wouldn't see why he'd want to keep a guy who is quick and, you know, looked really good when he played. So I don't know. But I hear you, Dave. So
Just wanted to float that because I wouldn't be shocked if we hear the top top 10 picks don't get traded. I think the last time a top 10 pick got traded was the Rangers with Derek Stepan.
yeah, which is crazy to think about.
And the last time a top 5 pick was traded, I believe, was 1999, also the Rangers,
Mm-hmm.
interestingly
Correct.
enough.
So
So we're
yeah.
actually due.
Yes, we are. We are due because I think that could change the course of a lot of things with this team. But
Just thinking about this, each time the Rangers have made a trade for a top 10 pick, it's been a bust.
yeah, that is true. So one of them
Oh
obviously
God,
was
I'm gonna
one of
cry.
them. One of them was Leah Sanderson, of course. That's
Leas
one.
Anderson, and then the
And
other
then it
one
was
was one
in
of
'98
Lundmark or the other
Pavel
guy,
Brendel. Was
Brendel.
it
Yeah,
Brendel? Or
Brendel.
okay, I was gonna say
Hold
Jan
on.
Hlavic,
Now
but
I'm gonna pull this up. Who they traded, and that'll be it. We have gone on way too many tangents
yeah, because
today.
we spent the first 20 minutes talking about age.
Well, that's your fault.
That's your fault.
Nope, that's your fault. All right, the 1999 draft. The Rangers wound up with, they traded up for the 4th overall pick, Cloutier and Sundstrom, and the number 8 pick, and the number 74 pick for Brendel. And then
Oh
they moved
gosh.
up again to get the 9th pick, moving Mark Savard and the number 11 pick to Calgary for Jan Hlavich, the 9th pick, which was Jamie Lundmark,
Oh
and
my gosh.
a 3rd round pick, which wound up being Craig Anderson.
The goalie or someone else?
Oh, wait, hold on. Did I read that wrong? Because Craig Anderson, hold on. The Rangers traded Mark Savard, a 1999 first round pick, which wound up being the 11th pick, which wound up being Saprikin, to Calgary for. I guess some of this is off because it has Craig Anderson being drafted by Calgary, which makes more sense. I don't remember the Rangers having Craig Anderson, but what the hell do I know? Anyway,
Maybe they just used
um,
the pick for him. Probably that's usually how
yeah,
they that's
yeah,
usually how they notate it, because they'll say the pick and then they'll note the pick, the player that it was picked by.
yeah.
That's usually what
Anyway,
happens.
but
They
yeah,
do
so the
do that.
Rangers moved
Yeah.
up twice in
And
'99 and
none
got
and none of those guys worked out. Unbelievable.
the Rangers have traded into the top 10 3 times, and all 3 times they've been bust. So maybe they don't want to trade into the top 10.
Well, I think they have. I think hopefully they'll have better luck because I think
Have you
I think.
seen the way Drury drafts lately?
Well, yeah, but you can say the same about every other GM that's been
Let
here since
let's let
2000.
you know what? Let's make people listen next week.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this then because we can talk
Well,
about this shit all day.
yes, we can. Well, we did basically for the most part at some point in the length last podcast. But anyways, all right. So we've been running along. Dave needs to take his Metamucil and go to sleep.
That's my
Um,
weed
this
gummy.
has been it's just live from the Blue Seats. Also, shout out to Rob. We miss him.
Yeah, Rob, where
He's
you been?
been yeah, he's been kind of
Actually, I'll
away
see him in
healing
a
up.
month. I'll
Oh
see him
yeah,
and Becky
I'll
soon. Yeah,
tell
as long
tell
as they don't double book my girl's birthday party again, they'll be here. So I'll see them and I'll ask what the hell's going on. Although he
him.
did like shatter his ankle or some shit like that.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but yeah, he like broke his ankle. And I don't know what it is about people helping with Blue Sea blogs where they hurt themselves because that also happens to the 30 on Broadway guys. But
Yeah, and
Chris is
Becky herself
progressing.
has terrible ankles to begin with.
Well, she's gonna come and stab you for that now.
No,
It's probably
she owns it. I made a
oh
joke about it to them. I'm like, "What's with that family and ankle injuries?"
oh oh I okay. Well, I guess that's fair.
Anyway, for
Um,
next
oh,
time,
yes, for next time. But I just wanted to say, hopefully Rob will be back soon. Becky will be back soon. Also, my best to Chris and Nick on the 30 on Broadway podcast. I know Chris is having, a similar issue with his leg, and hopefully, he had to, deal with some stuff. So best of him. Reach out to them, give them your best wishes, and hopefully we'll see them on here at some point. So that's been live from the Blue Seats. This is Old Man Dave. I'm Young Man John Luke Shapiro, producer JL coming at you. Have a good night and be sure to listen next week because we'll probably end up recording just about an hour or two. Later, skaters, and let's go Rangers.